Hey guys, how's it going? So I know I haven't posted in a while any videos, but I've been working on one. I wrote it about 10 days ago. I have my notes here. Just that my overnight schedule mixed with having appointments and then obviously the Easter holiday. I haven't been able to get in front of the camera, so I have that opportunity tonight. I'm going to try and deliver it to you. It's been a pretty rough go tonight so far. So I think like 6 or 7 takes so far. I want to make sure I get it right. It is a message that is political and ministry, and I want you to remember that I've always said that a true minister cannot be politically correct. Political correctness in this day and age calls too much for acceptance and approval of things that are totally against the Word of God. So, you can call me whatever name you want. I know I'm none of the labels you want to put on me, but just don't call me politically correct, because I never will be. But like I said, I've been working on this one, and as a minister, we're supposed to minister the Word of God, but we also work through the love of God, and love God brings correction when correction is needed. So when something is wrong, we call it out. This is an alternative view to the gun control debate going on. It's not going to be about the gun control debate, though, I promise you that. Obviously it's been brewing for years. The whole gun debate thing has been going on for I don't even know how long. But even though it's been brewing for years, obviously it's recently been sparked by the events that took place in Parkland, Florida. And before I go any further, I do want to say that no matter what happened in Parkland is nothing less than a horrible tragedy. And I know the left likes to say, well, if you're for the NRA, then you don't mind killing children, and if you're pro Second Amendment, then you're okay with our children dying. And I really hope they don't believe that. I would hope they have more of a conscience and heart than to actually believe that. Nobody wants to see children die. If somebody wants to see children die, then they are just a sick, horrible person. Alright, so I really hope the left does not believe that when they say that to the right. Because it's so far from the truth. Nobody wants to see children hurt. Nobody wants to see them suffer. We just have a difference of opinions of how we can end that. Many people have their opinions. And I'm just going to say this. What happened in Parkland? This should never happen. Our children should feel safe going to school, being in school, and coming home from school. And a lot want to point at Parkland as an example of why we need gun control. And I say you can't do that. If ever there is the worst example, well, Parkland is it. And I say this because it was completely avoidable. Broward County School District switched over to a new program through the Obama administration they called it actually, Florida called it the Promise Program. It was designed to lower arrest rates for juvenile, especially minorities. And I do believe that probably there was some kind of racist action going on where black or Hispanic kids were probably getting more harsh punishment for behaviors than white kids were. But when I'm talking about behaviors, I'm not talking about just spitballing or throwing paper airplanes across the room or even skipping school. I'm talking about things that would be misdemeanor crimes. Assault, as long as they didn't have a weapon, assault. Robbery. There's a list of charges that normally a juvenile would have a criminal record for, but somehow the Department of Education under Barack Obama came up with this great plan of, let's not have them arrested when they assault someone, they beat the hell out of somebody. Let's put them in a program where we talk about it, or we have them do silly little obstacle courses in the gym, you know. But this way we don't give them a record with the juvenile courts before they even graduate high school. In Florida they called it PROMISE, and PROMISE stood for, it's an acronym, PROMISE stood for Preventing Recidivism Through Opportunities, Mentoring, Interventions, Support, and Education. And this was supposed to be such a great program. You know, they're no longer going to turn children in, even in cases of assault. Like, take for instance the kid who did the shooting in Florida. You know, just months before, he had already gotten 2 assaults, which technically, under the old system, the campus police would then arrest him. But because of this new PROMISE program, they weren't allowed to. I haven't found out exactly what they are, but there's 5 steps they have to take before they can actually arrest a student now. And you know, had he been arrested for that assault, or any of the 30 or 40 plus calls to the sheriff's department, or the 2 or 3 calls to the FBI agent, had any of them actually been followed through with, this kid never would have been able to buy the gun. He would have been on the list that says, no, can't purchase that firearm. So my point about this is, you can make all the gun laws in the world that you want to make. But if there's other systems out there that are manipulating, and that's exactly what this was, because they were getting grant money, because at one time Florida touted, Broward County touted the highest amount of student arrests in Florida, and then within years they were way down to even no expulsions or suspensions. And why? Because they got tens of millions of dollars in grant money by being able to tout that we don't have juvenile delinquency problems. The problem is, and I said manipulating, because it's only on paper that they don't have the issue. Children were still acting out in violent ways, assaulting. Like I said, this Florida kid, this shooter kid, the most recent of his activities were 2 assaults within 4 months. There's other ones across the country. In St. Paul, Minnesota, a high school science teacher was beaten and choked out by a 16-year-old student who allegedly came up behind him, called him, a 16-year-old student who allegedly came up behind him, called him an effing white cracker, and put him in a stranglehold before bashing his head into a concrete wall and pavement. The student got 90 days of electronic home monitoring and anger management counseling. That was in December of 2015. The instructor, who has experienced short-term memory loss and hearing problems, blames the Obama-era discipline policies for emboldening the students, emboldening criminal behavior, and adding that school violence is still rising out of control. Oklahoma City, which softened student punishments in response to a federal race bias complaint, students are yelling, cursing, hitting, and screaming at teachers, and nothing is being done. An Oklahoma City public school teacher said, "These students know there is nothing a teacher can do." Buffalo, New York, a teacher who got kicked in the head by a student said, "We have fights here almost every day. The kids walk around and say, 'We can't get suspended. We don't care what you say.'" So that's why I'm saying it was a manipulating thing, is because it was only on paperwork that any changes were being made. Kids were still doing what kids were doing. The schools just weren't reporting it. So they manipulated to get these tens of millions of dollars worth of grants. That's Broward County alone, by the way. You know, so you can have all the gun laws in the world, but if you have these manipulating programs and then others who aren't following the gun laws, what good are they? You know, the FBI says that had the school reported this kid just one time, he never would have been able to get that gun. That's all it would have taken. This kid should have been either incarcerated or at least institutionalized for an evaluation, which again would have prevented him from getting the firearm he used. So that's why I say it's the worst. There's so many failures, and then the failures with the sheriff's department. You just cannot use Parkland as an example for gun control, because there were so many failures. This kid was getting in trouble years before the shooting. So you can go back years, like, before. That's when these failures started. So yeah, it's a horrible example to use. But oh, by the way, I'm getting my information from a website called realclearinvestigations.com. If you want to look it up, it's an awesome story. I read the whole thing, and I was going to read the whole thing here, but it takes so much time. So I know you guys are busy. Excuse me. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I know you guys are busy, and you don't have time for me to read from the website for you. So I'm just going to make my points and get out of here, alright? But so when this happened, and again, you know, this was a horrible tragedy. No child, no person should ever have to experience such a traumatizing event. Absolutely not. But now I want to turn my attention, your attention, to what I call the pseudo-celebrities, the front runners of survivors which have sprung up from this tragedy, namely David Hogg. Now, you know, there's been a lot of speculation of either he wasn't at the school at all, or he was at school and he left and got his camera and came back. You know, whatever. It doesn't matter. That part doesn't matter. What matters is what his first instinct was. Because his first instinct was not the grieving process. His first instinct was not to tend to the well-being of fellow classmates who just went through the same exact trauma he went through. His first instinct was to play reporter. Whether he was home and he grabbed his camera and went to the school, or he was at the school and went home, got his camera and came back, doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that he grabbed his camera and he played reporter. He went with his camera to record the mayhem and conduct interviews. In other words, instead of putting his arms around kids and saying, I'm so sorry, we should never have to experience this, what he actually did was, so why don't you tell me what you're feeling right now? Put the camera in their face. Put the camera right in their face. And then, not interestingly enough, like right behind him was CNN and other mainstream media. You know, they rolled right in there. And now, I'm going to be honest with you, I've experienced a few traumatic events in my life, some as a juvenile, some as an adult. And I'll be honest with you, whether a juvenile or adult, it wasn't days or even weeks. It was months, and even some of the stuff I'm not over as of right now. But for me to grieve and process took at least months, if not years. And now you look at these young kids who were just through a traumatic experience that my traumatic experiences fail in comparison to. Mine are nothing like what they went through. And the amount of time that these kids got to grieve and process, hours to maybe a day, before cameras were in their face, before spotlights were in their face, and before policy was being pushed at them. You know, mainstream media ran right to this. The Democratic Party ran right to this. It wasn't a let me wrap my arms around you and let you know you're loved. It was, tell us what you're feeling. What do you think about guns? And then the Democratic Party, of course, on there, we need gun control. We need gun control. We need... The kids that are inside, that just got shot and killed, their bodies aren't even cold, and you're already on a podium preaching gun control and shoving cameras in kids' faces. Like, it's just so disgusting. And I'm saying you. When I say you, I mean the liberal media and the Democratic Party. You've put them on what is now become a world stage. World stage. You've got people in Germany chiming in. You've got people in England chiming in. You've got people in Australia and Canada chiming in. This is a world stage now. They're known around the world. Go on Twitter. You got people in Canada saying, "Oh, go David, go David." You know, but you also led them to policy. Please don't try and buffalo anybody on this. You led them to policy. There's no way these kids know. I shouldn't say no. There's no way these kids are coming up with the same exact talking points of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. But the problem is that this is not a debate over school lunch or even just school security. You put them smack in the middle of one of the most controversial issues in this country. An issue dealing with the rights of every American. Every American. It's one of the hottest of hot button topics that you threw them into. You knew they would be interacting with adults in politics. But you did it anyway. Why? Well, because they're a cash cow to you. Seriously. I mean, a ratings boost for the mainstream media, and we know you need that because you're like, and then for the Democrats, you have unpaid agenda pushers. You know, best case scenario for the left. Well, you know, it's obvious that you don't even give a rat's backside about these kids. Because for the left, best case scenario, the ratings skyrocket for media and your agenda gets pushed, or at least a boost for the Democrats. Worst case scenario for you is that nothing changes. Nothing changes. Unfortunately, I believe it's going to be the latter. And with that is going to come the collateral damage. You see, these kids are speaking, and most of what they're saying is patently false and or deceptive at best. You know, so when they speak these false statements or outright lies sometimes, Cameron Kasky with the whole, there's no regulations on the Second Amendment. Right, Cameron, sit down, please. So they speak these lies and misinformation, and adults from the right, which, you know, would include me, step in to correct. And then suddenly the adults from the left ridicule us. And they say we're picking on the children. We're bullies. No, we're not. You see, you can't hail them as these great leaders of a controversial movement for an issue from an adult arena. And then, when they're challenged, as they most certainly will be, you ridicule their challenger. And you say, you're picking on these fragile children. So, are they these strong leaders of a movement? Or are they fragile children that shouldn't be picked on? They cannot be both. They can't be. If you're a strong leader, you've got to be strong and you've got to expect adversity. If you're a fragile child, you should step down off the world stage and go home and process this and grieve as you should have in the beginning. You know, the sad truth is, they're a part of what I call the passive parenting generation. They didn't have to try out to make a team. There was automatic inclusion. They didn't have to play or even be good at it to win. Everybody wins, everybody gets a trophy. You know, at home they get whatever they want, and sometimes they don't even have to ask for it. They don't have to earn anything at all, you know. And they don't. They really don't earn a thing. You know, you're instilling a total sense of entitlement. You don't enter their bedrooms or look in their backpacks because they deserve privacy and that's their safe spaces. No, no. These are your children. Those safe spaces are places where they hide their deviancies. Our children should not have private lives separate from us. Until they are old enough to leave the house and pay their dues in society, they live under our roof. And we need to know what's going on. We need to know, is there drugs in there? We need to know, is there alcohol in there? We need to know, are there guns amassing in there? He's like, oh, not my kid, not my kid. Do you really know your kid? Seriously, do you really know your kid? Why don't you go in there and check? Because I bet you at least 70% of the people who say, not my kid, will go in there and check and find out, yeah, it was your kid too. You know, you let them play whatever video games they want. And I don't blame video game makers. I definitely don't blame the game itself. You know, the video game makers have done their due diligence in putting the labeling on their games and say, this is for teens, or this is for mature, 18 and older. So, they've done what is necessary to let you know that there's graphic violence, there's nudity, there's, you know, but you don't sit down with your children who are sitting there playing a game where if they kill someone or that they are killed themselves, you know, you push a button, you restart. They're becoming desensitized to death because nobody's sitting down and telling them, look, that's fantasy. This is reality. On top of this, they're not seeing any consequences, and they're totally entitled. You know, we gotta start discussing reality with our children. You indoctrinate them with this liberal mindset, these liberal views. And, I'll tell you right now, growing up, I'm sure my mother had some kind of political views and sociological views. She never pushed them on my brother and I. She lived her life, but she allowed us to form our own thoughts, our own opinions. She guided us, don't get me wrong. It's not like she's like throwing us to the wolves. She guided us, but she never influenced our thoughts. She let us become who we are. She let us be ourselves. And these kids are not they're not themselves. They're miniature versions of their parents, They're taught that they're always right. Anybody who opposes that is bad. They're never taught about opposing views. They do not have the capability to handle adversity. And now you've thrown them into a stadium of opposing views. These children who have never been taught about this. Soon they'll start to realize that this is not childhood. They'll have to do more than just show up to get the trophy. They're going to have to prove themselves. They will be challenged. They'll need facts. Emotional-based opinions will not cut it. They will need facts. Soon they'll start to feel their first taste of defeat. They're not going to know how to handle it. They're definitely going to crash. Because you got to remember, you never gave them time for processing and grieving for the first trauma. And now suddenly here comes that second trauma that I'm out here speaking and there's people speaking against me. And I just don't know how to handle it. And now they're getting slammed by that second trauma. They are going to lose it. And I've got to say, beware. And I'm not saying any of this with joy in my heart because I love these kids. I don't know them, but I do love them. As a minister, as a person of God, I love them. They're children. And I hate to see them going through this, even though people say, well, they put themselves out there. Well, sure. They made the decision to go out there on that world stage, but you know what? It was up to the adults to kind of say, listen, I know you have a message, and I know you want to share it. Let us do some talking right now. You grieve and you process this and you get through this a little bit. And then come out and talk. But the adults didn't. The kids said we want to talk. The adults said go right ahead. And now they're going to end up having mental breakdowns. I am sure there's going to be severe and possibly violent temper tantrums. The part that scares me the most, however, is that it's quite possible there's going to be attempted suicides. They're not going to know how to handle their world crashing down on them. Their young lives will be shattered. And it will be the fault of the mainstream media and the leftists, including their parents, that put them on this world stage and that have used them. Because that's what it was. It will have no effect on the mainstream media or the Democratic Party. To you, they're just puppets. That's all they are. They are puppets. And you know that. I don't need to tell you that. The world knows that too, though, by the way. I don't know if you think you're pulling one over, but you'll move on to the next opportunity and you'll blame everybody else. That's what you do. That's what you do. You know, you are mentally ill, evil. You're a mentally ill, evil bunch of people. You seriously are. You are without conscience. Media and Democrats love school shootings. I know that's a controversial thing to say, and I know I can get in trouble for saying that, I'm sure, somewhere, somehow. But I'm going to repeat what I just said. Mainstream media and the Democratic Party love school shootings. You're like vultures, just sitting on a post, waiting for that to happen. So you just swoop in with your agendas. Immediately start pushing your policies. You live to label the opposition. What, you're against same-sex? That makes you homophobic. You think transgender is a mental disorder? That makes you transphobic. You don't think that Islam is the religion of peace? Well, that's because you're an Islamophobe. You're going to fact-check our puppets? Our juvenile puppets? Well, that's because you're a bully and a child killer. Just remember when they break, because they're going to. Remember, you did this. You created this. I'm tired of going online and seeing them giving false facts. I say false facts because they're pushing it as facts, but it's false. And the problem is, not just that they're saying it, but when they're speaking to people who are going to be either too lazy or too ignorant to do research. And people are buying this stuff as true, as real, as 100%. And this is policy deciding. And that's why I said, you're either a strong leader or you're a fragile child. If you're a fragile child, you can't be out there pushing policy that you don't know about. Listen, I'm not against kids using their free speech. I'm against the fact that you guys allow them out there so soon after a traumatic event. But I'm not against them using their free speech, even though I'm on the opposing side. I am against the fact that it will not be debated by anybody from the right. I am against the fact that the right will not, or the left news shows will not have any right-sided students on there, because they're out there, and it's not just Kyle, though he is one of them, there's others. You can't keep pushing these kids like this. You're destroying them. The entire liberal party is destroying this country. When's it going to stop? When are you actually going to stop the insanity? The pushing of agendas on people, the false reporting, the lies. When are you going to stop using people for your own gain? I need to know. I would love to know, because I'd love to be able to turn the TV on and watch news again. But I will not. At this moment, I will not. because I know I'm going to get nothing but lies. You have an agenda to push and you're pushing it. So until that happens, I cannot watch TV. But I thank you if you're still with me listening. Well, that's probably because you're insane, but you guys have a good night, good day, good morning, whatever it is. Enjoy yourselves.